Today, I thought to talk about not just one of the Whispers from Eternity, which I'll get to in a moment, but also an overarching theme on prayer that I thought was important and was meaningful to me recently. And that is the necessity for authenticity in our prayer and in our relationship with our Guru and our relationship with the divine. That I was just teaching a class last night, and we were talking about devotion, Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion, the path of divine love. And a student asked, does this mean that I need to be having this sort of contrived experience of a love for God? And what if I'm not feeling that? And I thought it was such a wonderful question, because what if we're not feeling that? We know that devotion is a admirable quality in a yogi, and Patanjali talks so highly of it that he says the fruit of true and ultimate devotion is that you are drawn into God's consciousness. So it really is half the battle, as Yogananda would often say, but he would say chanting is half the battle. And so, yet even still, when some of us sit down to pray or some of us sit down to meditate, there can be a conflict that arises between how we actually are and how we think we ought to be in order to be devotional, in order to demonstrate our devotion. And this is a very fine line. And it's very interesting when we think about this in regards to Whispers from Eternity in particular, because the prayer demands contained within this book are no small thing. They are mountains of devotion. They are, the very zenith of aspiration. And sometimes we might not feel up to the task of praying with them authentically, truthfully. We might sometimes feel like we're putting on a little bit of a show. And I think this is something important to understand in a more nuanced way. So that way we can integrate our own hearts and our own experience of prayer, meditation, devotion, and ultimately a deeper experience of God's love unfolding in our hearts. I was an actor in Los Angeles for a number of years before God and the masters shifted the gears of my karma a little bit and helped me to redirect my energies. But I learned some very valuable lessons in that arena. And one of the things that I learned over and over and over again was the need for truth, the need for authenticity, the need for sincerity. Because acting, if I were to try and reduce it as quickly as possible, is simply the art of having an authentic, real human experience in a manufactured scenario. That the goal is to be able to be you, is to be real and to have an authentic experience with another human being in such a way that hopefully will result in the audience having a greater revelation about the human experience than they had before. But it all pivots on simply the ability to be in tune with yourself. That if you are not able to authentically place both of your feet, metaphorically, in your own heart and acknowledge who and what you are in this particular moment, the whole thing would crumble. And I'm sure we've all seen bad acting before, but it's particularly painful, isn't it? When people are putting on a show, or when you can see them acting, as we would say in Los Angeles. And it's embarrassing. For the audience, it's embarrassing to watch that sort of a show, because you're constantly reminded that it's fake. And you're constantly reminded that it's not a reflection of life or a reflection of truth, but that it's really like a farce. And it ends up demeaning the actors, and it demeans the audience a little bit too, because you're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place, trying to be charitable in your support of the arts, but also simultaneously realizing that this is not a reflection of truth. And so similarly, sometimes I myself find I am in my own devotion, that I will be trying to pray in a way that I've been taught or in a way that I think I ought to be doing, but I discover that that's not really where my heart is. And so it feels inauthentic and it feels contrived. And there is that little voice in the back of my head that says, you don't really mean that. And it's really important to actually listen to that voice, believe it or not, that there is a time and a place for everything, and there is a time to affirm a higher attitude than what we have, to affirm a greater experience than our normal state of consciousness. But we also, simultaneously, need to acknowledge where we are and where we're trying to go. Because you cannot climb a mountain by simply looking at the peak through a telescope and saying, I am at the top of the mountain. You can look at the top of the mountain through that telescope and you can say, I know what this will feel like when I reach the summit. But still, when you collapse the telescope, you have to place one foot in front of the next to begin the long climb upwards. And so too, in our own devotion, that we can use the telescope of our awareness to perceive deeper states of consciousness by tuning into these great prayers, by tuning into the examples of the saints. And then we need to discover how we can be authentic in expressing our heart to the divine. That we should never feel like we're putting on a glove or a mask. We should never feel like we are presenting something because we think it's how it ought to be. When we're talking to God, when we speak with God, it should be, as Yogananda said, God is the dearer than the dear. He is nearer than the near to your heart. And we should be able to speak without boundaries, without reservations, without filters, just completely honestly, as if you were speaking to your very best friend. In fact, perhaps even closer than your very best friend, because even our best human relationships, until we're really free, there are layers of fear and reservation and desire and compulsion. But with God, there's nothing. The only thing God wants is to help us. And I heard a quote once, I'm not sure who said it, but they said, prayer doesn't change our circumstances. Prayer changes us, and we change our circumstances. But in order for prayer to change us, we have to show God what's really going on. That if a child were to get in trouble and went to their parent seeking help and refused to tell the parent what had actually gone wrong, how could the parent guide the child? And I'll give a more specific example. I once was with a friend of mine, and a great man, but he was having a very good man, and he was having a challenging moment in his life where he was confused about directions he ought to be taking and how he ought to be behaving in a certain situation and with a certain person. But he was so embarrassed about the situation that he wouldn't tell us honestly what was going on. And so every time he came for help or for guidance or for support, he would only tell a tiny portion of the real story. And so one day he'd tell us this corner of the story and he'd ask for advice, and myself and my friends would give him a particular line of advice based on the information we were given that seemed like the logical way out of the quagmire of his suffering. And then 2 days later, when the situation had only gotten worse, and he came back and he said, God, oh my gosh, it's so much worse, I don't know what's going on. And we said, well, what happened? And he said, well, actually, what I told you before wasn't really the truth. This is actually the truth. And we said, oh, okay. Well, now that we understand, I think this would probably be the route I would recommend to get out of this. And so then 2 days later, sure enough, he'd come back, and it was, lo and behold, we still didn't know the whole story. And finally, I said to him with all kindness and with just a little bit of humor, I said, listen, if you were lost on the streets of a big city, and you were calling me for directions, but you constantly refused to tell me what intersection you were at, how could I possibly help you? Because it's just ridiculous to think that someone could help you in that situation. Just imagine calling them up. Hello, Fred. Hi, how are you? Oh, I'm lost. Oh, maybe I can help you. Yeah, you probably could, but I'm not going to tell you where I am. But so often we do that with God. And God will never impose His will upon us. God will never impose Himself upon us in any way. We have to invite His light. We have to invite His grace into our lives. And so when we pray, and we have to pray honestly, we need to show God where it is that we're a little lost in life, where we're a little unsure, where we need a little bit of guidance, where we need strength. We need to show God our weaknesses, because it's by revealing those pockets, those holdout bastions of resistance within us, that prayer opens the blinds for His light to come in to transform us. But as long as we withhold those things from Him, He can never help. And He'll just wait. God says, I will wait. I will wait 1,000,000 incarnations if need, until you ask me to come. And then as soon as you ask sincerely and with love, God comes in an instant to try and lift you up. And so I would encourage all of us, lower the walls that surround your heart when you speak with God. Don't be afraid of being messy, of being unkept, of being disheveled when you pray. But just pour all of your heart's feelings unreservedly at His feet. And it does not have to be in a string of beautifully arranged poetic words. It can just be the sincere soul cry of your need in the moment. And if you train yourself to do this without inhibition, just sharing from your heart to God, then when you suffer, you will offer your suffering at His feet. When you love, you will offer your love at His feet. And when you mourn, you will offer your grief at His feet. And then in every one of these situations, His light can come in, and His light can change us. And then we can uplift and transform our circumstances, but only if we open the door, only if we are honest, authentic, and truthful with the divine. So to that end, when we take a look at these whispers from eternity, sometimes it may feel like a contradiction, because we might read a prayer, which I will in a second, and say, but that's not how I actually feel. That's not how I feel now. So what do we do about that? Well, I would encourage you to meditate upon what it would be like to feel these words authentically. What would it be for this prayer to be a spontaneous outburst of your heart's feelings for the divine? And can you meditate on that vibration? Can you attune your heart to that song? And then over time, you may discover that its melody naturally sings through you. I heard Nayaswami Anandi at Ananda Village. She shared beautifully about this, that she said the poem God's Boatman, which is a very high bar for as aspiration goes, where he says, I will come back 1,000,000 times crossing, or I will come back 1,000,000,000,000 times, crossing 1,000,000 crags of suffering, with bleeding feet I will come. But at the end of the prayer, he says, I want Thee, O God, that I may give Thee to all. I want salvation, that I may give it to all. And Anandi was saying that she was praying this, she was using this prayer over a period of many years, and discovered that over time, she very authentically began to discover that feeling growing in her heart. That it no longer became just a prescribed set of words, but it became a sincere experience. I want Thee, O God, that I may give Thee to all. I want salvation, that I may give it to all. Free me then, O Lord, from the bondage of this body, that I may show others how they too can free themselves. I want Thine everlasting happiness, but I want also to share it with all, that all my fellow brothers may find their way to happiness forever and forever in Thee. Isn't it a beautiful prayer? Of course. It's incredibly uplifting. But how wonderful would it be for that to be the spontaneous soul cry of our heart in the morning, for it to be the spontaneous soul cry of our heart at noon, at night, at work, at eating, working, sleeping, chanting, all the time. So sweet. But we'll never get there by just blind affirmation. We need to also bridge the gap between our current experience and our highest aspirations by being real with God. And so now, I'm going to share our Whispers from Eternity for today, which is a continuation from last week's theme. We did the prayer at dawn last week, And now I'll share the prayer at noon, which I've also taken some time with. So before I begin, let's all sit up straight and let's close our eyes, visualizing at the spiritual eye the blazing sun of high noon, resplendent and shining, magnanimous in its radiation of light and bliss and energy, vitality to all life. And let's visualize that sun there at the spiritual eye as a symbol of God's light, love, and power throughout all of the universe. And feel that you are drinking in its dynamic rays, even now. The sun shines high in the heavens. Everything is fully awake. Awaken thou me likewise. Thou art invisible, yet thine energy flows through the rays of sunshine. Fill my veins with thine invisible rays, making me strong and tireless. As the sun shines in the busiest streets, so may I behold thy rays of protecting love in the crowded places of my life's activities. As the light shines steadily, undisturbed on the street, whether crowded or empty, so may I hold my calmness and my strength steadily while I move through the crowded or empty streets of life. Give me strength, and what I receive, teach me to share with others. Isn't this a wonderful prayer? And if we were to meditate on its essence, I'm sure that every one of us could authentically, sincerely, dynamically offer this prayer to the divine from our heart to His, without any reservation, without any outward act. And so what I really like to do when I look at these whispers from eternity is I try to eat the words, to digest them, to understand, and to feel the kindling aspiration that it gives me, and allow that little fire to grow and build until I too can feel the inspiration of this prayer within me. And then you don't have to remember these exact words. I've mentioned how useful it is to memorize these prayers, which it is. But if you just meditate on this prayer, fill my veins with thine invisible rays, making me strong and tireless. Think about that. What would that experience feel like? Have you ever felt that? Have you ever practiced Yogananda's energization exercises and felt the dynamic power of God flow through you? Remember that experience. Have you ever felt the joy of a perfect day? Remember that experience. And then pray to God, help me to feel this more deeply in whatever way is meaningful to you. You don't have to remember the perfect arrangements of words and syllables to be sincere. You just need to remember to pray. This is a beautiful prayer. I enjoy taking this at noon every day, because at noon is a special resting point in the energy of nature. That dawn, noon, dusk, midnight are 4 natural resting points of nature. But at high noon, the sun, which is a symbol of the divine splendor, is at its zenith, is at its greatest height and power. And it's a beautiful time to pause whatever it is that you're doing, conveniently right around your lunch break perhaps, and close your eyes, even if just for a moment, and feel that omnipotent power of the divine surrounding you, filling your veins with His invisible rays, making you strong and tireless. If you feel to, step outside. Close your eyes and look up at the sun, feeling its rays shining down upon your face, and feel that you are imbibing its vitality and its power, and asking God to uplift your consciousness, to enlighten your thoughts, and to direct your feelings in noble aspiration towards Him. And then, if you feel to, remember certain other of the phrases. As the sun shines in the busiest streets, so may I behold thy rays of protecting love in the crowded places of my life's activities, then perhaps you can say those words, or perhaps you can simply feel the essence of them, asking God to protect you no matter your outward circumstances, to be with you no matter what, and to empower you with His grace as you act on His behalf in the world. As the light shines steadily, undisturbed on the street, whether crowded or empty, so may I hold my calmness and my strength steadily while I move through the crowded or empty streets of life. Isn't it a beautiful thing to think about? Just visualize how evenly the sun distributes its light across the universe, that it shares without concern. For if we're able or willing to receive, the sun just gives. And so too, we can ask God, shine your protecting light and help me to hold my calmness and my strength ever steadily, undisturbed, unperturbed, through the crowded or empty streets of my life's activities. How beautiful would it be to carry that nobility of spirit like the sun equally, no matter our outward circumstances. Truly then, as Swami Kriyananda so beautifully put it in one of his songs, win peace and you'll live like a king. That's what we're talking about in this prayer. Give me strength, and what I receive, teach me to share with others. Isn't that beautiful? Just those two simple sentences, if you could remember nothing else, perhaps out of this entire prayer, or perhaps out of this entire book, give me strength, or give me yourself, give me your inspiration, give me devotion, give me love, give me calmness, give me peace. And what I receive, teach me to share with others. Because the more we act as a channel of the divine to others, the more that God can flow through us and bless us all the more. And so this is a very important part of this prayer. And as I receive, teach me to share with others. So my friends, as you go throughout your day today and throughout the week, try pausing at noon. Try pausing when the sun is glorious at its height, and remembering the splendor of God's presence, of God's protection around you, with you, within you. And ask God to fill you with His presence. And as you receive, may you share with others. Lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother, what lightning flash glimmers in thy face. Seeing thee I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother, what lightning flash glimmers in thy face. Seeing thee I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother, what lightning flash glimmers in thy face. Seeing thee I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother, what lightning flash glimmers in thy face. Seeing thee I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. What lightning flash glimmers in thy face, Mother? What lightning flash glimmers in thy face? Seeing thee, I am thrilled through and through. 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 Seeing